For everyone watching, my name is Giancarlo, and you're watching ZotTube. I'm here today again with Dr. Willie Banks, UCI's Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. He'll just be going over with me, talking about UCI's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and how we can all stay safe during fall quarter. Dr. Banks, thank you again for taking time out of your day to talk with me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for the opportunity and to spend a little bit of time.
So, to start, many students like myself recently moved back into the dorms and apartments on campus. How did the overall housing moving process go with so many students moving in?
Yeah, I think it went well. And I think from all indications, we are quite happy with the process. And it was an adjustment for everyone because typically some of our halls would have the capacity to have triples and quads. And part of our planning was to actually reduce the density. So we actually went down to single occupancy in most of the, most of the residence halls. So for a lot of our students moving back to campus, they actually had a lower density. And we also instituted a number of safety measures to really ensure the health and safety and well-being of our students. And one of those included that we actually had a testing regimen. So students, before they could actually move into their residence halls and receive the key, they had to go to the Bren and go through a round of testing. And so that was one of the things that we instituted, and really in the hopes of making sure that everyone understood that while we are in the middle of a global pandemic and it's very serious, we wanted our students to actually have the opportunity to come back to campus. And even though a majority of the classes are being taught virtually, we understand that for some of our students, being on campus is the safest, most efficient place for them to be and to study. And so we wanted to make sure that we were taking steps to make sure that everyone felt safe. And so from my vantage point, from our housing and residential life team, I think that everyone was pleased with the process. We extended the move-in process over 4 or 5 days. It wasn't just a day or 2 days. It was a long process. We actually limited the number of helpers that each student could bring with them. And it was a drive-in process as far as how you received your keys. So I think it went well. And there was a lot of cooperation from a number of our students and then our partners to really pull this off. So I would say kudos to everyone in residence life and housing, but more importantly, kudos to our students that really understand the importance of coming back to campus, but also taking this seriously, because once they got here, you actually had to go through a sequestration period, and also you're placed in a ZOT pod. So there are a lot of moving parts, and we're also asking people to still uphold the Anteater Pledge. So it's just not come back to campus and then break loose and just have fun. There are some real serious consequences to being on campus. So we need everyone to take advantage and really understand that it's really important that everyone follows the rules while they're on campus.
Well, I'm glad that UCI has prepared so much and everything has gone so well so far. So I know that one of the requirements to live on campus has been weekly COVID-19 testing. UCI has had to work quickly to be able to test everyone. Can you talk about what UCI has done with regards to testing and what students can expect moving forward?
Sure. Well, and actually the interesting thing, testing, everyone's doing testing. And so first round of testing was phase one, where we actually tested the folks that were already on campus. So a number of graduate students and undergraduate students that happened to already be living on campus. So that was phase one. Phase two of testing was when we had our new students coming back to campus. And that happened prior to the move-in. So as I mentioned earlier, before students could actually move into the residence hall, they actually had to go to the Bren to do some testing. And so now we're moving into phase three of testing, which would be weekly testing. And our residents are now getting emails, our graduate students and undergraduate students, actually dictating and saying, this is the week for you to get tested. Make sure you sign up for your appointment. And we've set up different testing locations across campus. So right now there's at least 5 different locations. And so we are asking our undergraduates and the graduate students who are on campus that they need to do this testing. And so we will ask them to go through. And right now it is a self-administered nasal swab. And it shouldn't take more than 10 minutes from beginning to end, and a number of different locations to hopefully meet the need for our students so they don't have to traverse all the way across campus, but there would be a location near their residence hall or their apartment community. So that will be starting up in the near future, and that will continue until we are safely out of the woods. So definitely through winter quarter, possibly through spring, if not longer.
All right, so for my next question, We talked about testing, but there's also various policies that student housing has put in place. How have students handled all the changes, and how are they handling with compliance?
It's been interesting because it's been a huge adjustment, and it's not only for our campus, but you have seen this across the country where there are a number of institutions that have brought back their students and instituted some rules. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting is that college students, this is a brand new experience. And I'll be honest with you, I loved college, but I was in college when there wasn't COVID. And so one of the things that we have really had to do is do a lot of messaging to our students about sort of their rights and responsibilities as it relates to COVID. But then also the other thing is that we as the institution have really had to institute, really some tougher measures and really dictating and saying to people, you have to stay 6 feet apart. You have to have your face coverings on. You can't host gatherings. And those things are for really the safety of our students, but then also the larger, greater community. And unfortunately, we've had some students that have violated some of the policies and the executive directives, and we've had to institute some really tough sanctions for students. And I think that's the hard part for people to really understand, that having a gathering in COVID times really has some consequences, especially since we've been messaging for a very long time about the seriousness, and it's not safe to just have groups of people in closed spaces, and also when there's no social distancing happening, and then also when there's no face coverings. And so we've actually had to put a couple of students on interim suspension, and those have long-lasting consequences for our students. But we need people to understand that we are very serious about this, because it's just not our student body that we have to consider. We also have to think about our faculty and staff, the folks that are here on campus working every day. And we are encouraging everyone to do the daily symptom checker. And if you're not feeling well, please don't go to class. Please don't leave your apartment or your room until you've talked to the student health center or your primary care physician. It's so important for people to understand that this is serious. Now, on the flip side, the other thing is that when we've done the testing, we have had a very low positivity rate. And so when we did the first round of asymptomatic testing, we barely had any students test positive. And so, it's for our students, I think that they're in the mindset of, I've tested negative, so why can't I just hang out with people? And the hard part, and we have to remind people, is you can't let your guard down. So even if you're thinking about going to the grocery store or walking across the street to University Town Center, you've got to keep physical distance. You've got to put your face covering on. You have to continue to sanitize your hands. You have to keep distance from people. And so I know that there are going to be some people that struggle with that, but we're trying to work with them and to help them understand that part of the responsibility of them being on campus is that they have to take the entire community's health and safety and well-being into consideration. So our students are just one integral part of a larger ecosystem where we're trying to keep everyone safe.
So you were mentioning about how students right now might be feeling a little socially distant, as it were. Many students right now living on campus might also be feeling a little homesick. What should we expect if we want to go home for the weekend or even during the Thanksgiving holiday?
Yeah. Well, and we have been very clear for those residents, and really have told people, especially around the Thanksgiving holiday piece, that if you're going home for Thanksgiving holiday, you really should not come back to campus, and you should stay at home until the beginning of winter quarter. Because one of the things that what we're trying to do is trying to minimize the risk of people bringing in the virus and also people taking the virus back home. We don't want you to get anyone sick, so that's why we're so adamant about people wearing the face covering, and then also hand sanitizing and keeping their distance. And I know that this is going to be lonely. I will share with you, Juan Carlo, my family's back in Georgia, and I haven't seen them since February. And I'm not going home for Thanksgiving or for Christmas because my fear of traveling in the air to go from Orange County to Atlanta, and then also to spend time with my family. I don't want to get them sick, but then also I don't want to be sick. And so it is tough. It is very lonely, but let me just tell you, I do FaceTime with my family on a very regular basis. I talk to my mother and my brother and my sister on a regular basis. But what we're trying to do with our students here is really encourage them to make connections with folks in their ZotPods. And then also that there are also a number of programs and services through student affairs, everything from our counseling center to our resource centers to the Anteater Recreation Center, where you can go and you can meet people. As far as now, it's all virtual, but the meaning behind it is that we want people to build community. We want people to reach out, to think about the programs that we're offering through student affairs and see if they can find a connection with another person. Now, the best case scenario is that those folks in that Zot pod on your floor or in your house, and if you're in Arroyo Vista, or in your little community in your apartment, that you're doing all those things together. And then the chance of transmission is going to be fairly low if everyone is sticking together and we continue to do the Anteater Pledge. Everyone's getting tested on a weekly basis. Everyone's following those rules. So we understand that this can be lonely. So we want people to be safe, but we also need for people to understand you've got to really still keep your guard up. Just because you have a negative test doesn't mean that you can throw off your mask and just go shopping and go out and just have fun.
Well, I, for one, am so glad to hear that UCI is doing so much to ensure that students remain physically healthy. However, as you mentioned, our mental health is just as important. What are you and your team doing in this difficult time to help students with their mental wellness?
Yeah. A lot of it is around messaging and really making sure that our RAs that are working with our students and our professional staff that are on campus are trying to make connections with our students and making sure and just checking in and just making sure that they're okay. I will just share with you one example of the Center for Black Cultures. They had their fall harvest recently, and we had a number of African-American students that attended that opening. It was all done virtually. But one of the things that the director made a commitment to was actually reaching out to each of those students to make sure that someone was reaching out to them a couple of times throughout the quarter, just to check in on them to make sure that they're okay. Especially for a number of students where if you're a first generation student and you're coming to campus, this is not how any of us envisioned our college experience for our students to be. We wanted to see people on campus and really getting to know each other and interacting and attending events, but we've had to pivot. And so it's very important that we also reach out to our students, make sure that they know what resources are available through our counseling center, through social work, and also just encouraging them to get involved with different programs on our campus. And that's all done virtually, but it's still a connection point. I know that the Anteater Involvement Fair that happened during Welcome Week, during week 0, had a number of people sign up. I mean, we had thousands upon thousands of students participate in the Anteater Involvement Fair. So I hope that students are finding the avenues that they need to connect with other students. But I also hope that they understand that if everyone continues to do a good job of trying to stay away and trying to be healthy and safe, that eventually we'll get back to the point where we can have people on campus. This will not last forever, but let me just tell you, we have to make sure that people understand that it hasn't gone away yet.
Great. That sounds amazing. Well, that's all for today, everyone. Thank you all for watching. And Dr. Banks, I'd like to thank you again for joining me and for all your work in keeping our campus safe.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all of your work and spending some time with me. I hope I provided some insight into what's happening on campus. I can't wait for all of our students to come back at some point in time. Until then, everyone, please put on your face coverings. Please keep your distance from folks. Sanitize, do your daily symptom checker, and just be careful out there.